I, 26F, grew up as the eldest child in what I believed was a picture-perfect family. My father Robert, 52M, met my mother Linda, 49F, in college when they were both studying business. According to the stories they used to tell us, it was love at first sight. They got married right after graduation and had me 2 years later. My younger brother Tom, 23M, came along when I was 3. Dad built his real estate development company from scratch. I remember spending weekends at his office when I was little, playing with building blocks while he worked. He always said I was his lucky charm because his business really took off the year I was born. Mom initially worked in marketing but switched to teaching when Tom was born, saying she wanted a job that would let her spend more summers with us. Our childhood was filled with family vacations, holiday traditions, and what seemed like genuine love and happiness. Dad never missed a single one of my dance recitals or Tom's baseball games unless he was away on business. These trips became more frequent as his company grew, sometimes lasting up to 2 weeks, but we never questioned it because his success meant a comfortable life for us. Mom ran a tight ship at home while Dad was away. She made sure we excelled in school, participated in extracurriculars, and grew up with strong values. Dad would always bring back gifts from his trips, usually small things like local candies or souvenirs. Now I realize these were probably guilt gifts. I followed in Dad's footsteps and went to law school, making him proud. He paid for my entire education, saying his daughter would never have to worry about student loans. When I landed a job at a prestigious law firm 2 hours away from our hometown, Dad was ecstatic. He even helped me find my apartment and paid the security deposit as a graduation gift. Everything changed 3 months ago. I was working late one night, reviewing property records for a client's real estate transaction. The client wanted to ensure there were no liens or ownership disputes on several properties they were interested in purchasing. As I scrolled through the documents, my father's name caught my eye on a residential property deed. At first, I thought it was just another investment property. Dad often bought houses to flip or rent out. But something felt off about this one. The property was listed as his primary residence, which made no sense since he lived with Mom in our family home. I noticed a co-owner named Rachel, 45F, on the deed. The purchase date was 20 years ago, or on the time Tom was born. My legal training kicked in, and I started digging deeper. Each new document revealed another piece of an unbelievable puzzle. Dad and Rachel had a joint bank account. Their names were on several other properties together. And then I found it, their marriage certificate, dated just 6 months after Tom's birth. The more I investigated, the sicker I felt. School records showed 3 children, Emma, 19F, Jake, 17M, and Lisa, 15F. Dad had registered all of them using his real name. He had a whole other family living just 2 hours away from us. All those business trips suddenly made horrible sense. I spent days barely eating or sleeping, trying to decide what to do. The ethical part of me knew I should report my misuse of firm resources to access personal information, but the daughter in me was too shocked to think straight. I thought about confronting Dad directly, but years of watching him negotiate business deals made me realize he would just try to talk his way out of it. Finally, I decided Mom needed to know. I made copies of everything, organized it chronologically, and drove home one weekend when Dad was conveniently away on business. Mom was in the garden when I arrived. She'd taken up gardening a few years ago as a hobby. She looked so happy tending to her roses, and I almost lost my courage knowing I was about to shatter her world. I asked her to sit down and told her I had discovered something serious about Dad. Her first reaction was concern for his health. She thought I was going to say he was sick. I wish it had been that simple. As I showed her document after document, her hands started shaking. When I got to the kids' school records, she ran to the bathroom and threw up. Tom came home from his evening gym session to find Mom and me crying in the kitchen. He read through everything and punched a hole in the wall, something he'd never done before despite having quite a temper. He wanted to drive to Dad's other house right then, but Mom stopped him. She said she needed time to think. That night, Mom revealed something that made everything even worse. She and Dad had been trying for a third child around the time Tom was born, but she had several miscarriages. Dad was initially supportive but became distant during the last miscarriage. He started taking more business trips after that, saying he needed to focus on work to provide for our future. Now we knew what he was really doing. Mom hired a private investigator the next day. Within a week, we had photos of Dad with his other family, having dinner together, attending school events, even going on vacation. The PI also discovered that Dad had set up a whole other business identity to maintain his double life. He had 2 phones, 2 cars, and even different social media profiles. When Dad came home from his latest trip, Mom was waiting with Tom and me. The confrontation was awful. Dad first tried denying everything, then claimed it was a recent relationship when faced with evidence. Finally, when Mom showed him the marriage certificate, he broke down and admitted everything. But instead of showing remorse, he tried to justify himself. He said Mom had become focused on having another baby and then threw herself into teaching when it didn't happen. He claimed he felt neglected and lonely. He met Rachel at a real estate conference and she understood him better. He actually tried to blame Mom for his decision to start another family. The argument got ugly fast. Dad said he loved both his families and had done his best to take care of everyone. He called Mom selfish for not understanding his unique situation. When Tom called him a lying bastard, Dad slapped him. I'd never seen my father hit anyone before. Tom would have hit back if Mom hadn't stepped between them. Word spread through the family quickly. Most relatives were shocked and supportive of Mom, but Dad's sister actually defended him. She said men sometimes need more than one family to feel fulfilled and that Mom should have tried harder to keep him happy. My cousins have been posting cryptic social media messages about not judging others' choices. Then came the email from Emma, my half-sister. She got my work email from Dad and sent a lengthy message blaming me for destroying their family. Apparently, Rachel had no idea Dad was still married to Mom. He told her he was divorced when they met. Now both families are falling apart and Emma claims it's all my fault for not minding my own business. Dad's final message to me was brutal. He said I was dead to him and that he'd never forgive me for ruining everyone's lives. He threatened to report me to my firm and the Bar Association for accessing private records. He said I was just like Mom, too righteous and judgmental to understand that love doesn't follow normal rules. I know exposing the truth was right, but seeing both families in pain is harder than I expected. Mom barely eats and spends hours staring at old family photos. Tom has started drinking more than usual. Rachel's kids are posting horrible things about me online. Dad's parents won't even talk to any of us anymore. Ida for exposing my dad's secret life? Update 1 first, I want to thank everyone for their supportive comments on my original post. Your words helped me stay strong through what happened next, because things have gotten so much more complicated than I could have imagined. Last Wednesday, I was working late at my apartment when someone knocked on my door around 8 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I checked through the peephole and saw a woman I'd never met before. She kept knocking and finally said, "Sarah, I'm Rachel. We need to talk." My heart started racing because I immediately knew who she was, my father's other wife. Emma had given Rachel my address. I thought about not opening the door, but Rachel looked completely drained and honestly kind of desperate. When I let her in, she wasn't angry like I expected. Instead, she sat down on my couch and started crying. She pulled out a folder stuffed with papers and photos, saying she discovered Dad's lies went far deeper than any of us knew. Rachel showed me their wedding photos. Dad looked younger but just as happy as he did in his wedding photos with Mom. He told Rachel that his marriage to Mom ended when Tom was a baby, claiming Mom had cheated on him. He even created fake divorce papers to show Rachel's family. Rachel's parents had initially been against her marrying a divorced man with kids, but Dad charmed them just like he charmed everyone else. What really shocked me was when Rachel mentioned someone named Carrie. At first, I thought maybe it was another relative, but Rachel explained that she'd found hotel receipts and messages on Dad's phone showing he'd been seeing this woman for the past 5 years. She'd confronted him about it last week and he'd casually admitted to the relationship, saying he was planning to sell both houses and move to another state with Carrie. Rachel and I spent hours comparing stories. She told me how Dad would come home complaining about his demanding ex-wife, my mom, and his ungrateful children, Tom and me, using these lies to justify why he couldn't spend holidays with them. Meanwhile, he was telling us he had to work during holidays to keep his business running. He never missed any special occasions with either family, he just alternated between us, making excuses to the other side. We decided to dig deeper into Dad's finances, hiring a forensic accountant recommended by my law firm. The accountant uncovered years of systematic fraud. Dad had been embezzling money from his company through fake contracts and shell corporations. He used the stolen money to maintain both households and fund his lifestyle with Carrie. Even worse, Dad had taken out massive loans using both Mom's and Rachel's information. He forged their signatures on loan documents, using their good credit scores to borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars. The money disappeared into offshore accounts. Both Mom and Rachel are now potentially liable for these fraudulent loans. When the accountant started asking questions at Dad's company, Dad completely lost control. He showed up at Mom's house late one night, clearly drunk. Tom was thankfully staying with Mom to help her through everything. Dad started screaming about how we were all conspiring against him. He threatened to make sure Mom wouldn't get a penny in the divorce if we didn't stop investigating his finances. When Mom stood her ground, Dad tried to grab her. Tom stepped between them and pushed Dad away. Dad fell against the coffee table, breaking Mom's favorite lamp. He got up and tried to punch Tom, but he was too drunk and missed. Tom forced him out of the house and called the police, but Dad was gone before they arrived. The next morning, Mom discovered Dad had emptied their joint accounts, nearly $200,000 in savings gone overnight. He did the same thing to Rachel, leaving her account completely drained. When Mom called Dad's company about his threats and the missing money, his secretary told us he had resigned via email the previous day. The company's board of directors is now launching a full investigation into Dad's activities. They've already found evidence that he was charging personal expenses as business costs and using company resources to maintain his double life. They're considering pressing criminal charges for the embezzlement. Emma, Jake, and Lisa are staying with Rachel's parents while everything gets sorted out. But they're not handling things well. They've been posting horrible things about me and Tom on social media, saying we destroyed their perfect family out of jealousy. Jake created a fake profile pretending to be one of my law school classmates and posted lies about me cheating on exams. He only took it down after Rachel threatened to take away his phone. Mom is barely holding it together. The house she's lived in for 27 years, where she raised us and built all her memories, might be foreclosed because Dad had remortgaged it without her knowledge. He used Mom's excellent credit score to take out a second mortgage last year, forged her signature on the documents, and pocketed the money. The bank is unsympathetic despite the obvious fraud. Rachel's situation is equally dire. She works as a part-time dental hygienist, and her salary isn't enough to cover her mortgage payments. Dad had convinced her to quit her full-time job years ago, saying he wanted her to focus on raising their kids. Now she's struggling to find full-time work while dealing with the emotional fallout of his betrayal. Some of our relatives are still somehow defending Dad. His sister called me yesterday, screaming about how I had no right to destroy my father's reputation just because I was jealous of his success. She said I should have spoken to Dad privately instead of getting Mom and that other woman involved. When I tried to explain about the financial fraud, she hung up on me. I don't regret exposing Dad's lies, but watching everyone suffer because of his actions is killing me. Mom cries herself to sleep every night. Tom has started going to anger management classes because he's afraid he'll lose control if he runs into Dad. Rachel looks like she's aged 10 years in 2 weeks. And somewhere out there, Dad is probably lying to Carrie about everything, setting up his next victim. The police are looking for him, but so far, he's managed to disappear completely. Update 2: The situation with my father has spiraled into something far worse than any of us imagined. Last week, I received a message on LinkedIn from a woman named Carrie, 38F, asking if we could meet. I was hesitant at first, but she mentioned Dad's name and said she had important information to share. We met at a coffee shop near my office. Carrie was visibly pregnant, about 7 months along. She worked as a senior investment advisor at one of Dad's client companies. According to her, they met at a property development conference 5 years ago. Dad introduced himself as a recently divorced businessman looking to start fresh. He even showed her fake divorce papers, just like he did with Rachel. Carrie broke down crying in the middle of the coffee shop as she told me how Dad had convinced her to invest her entire inheritance, nearly $500,000, in what he claimed was a guaranteed real estate development project. She had recently lost her parents in a car accident and inherited their estate. Dad used her vulnerable state to manipulate her, promising they would build a future together with this investment. The entire project was fake. Dad created elaborate blueprints, fake permits, and even took Carrie to view properties that he claimed were part of the development but actually belonged to other people. He used her money to cover his tracks and fund his escape when our investigation started getting close to exposing his financial crimes. The pregnancy made everything more complicated. Dad had been promising to move in with Carrie before the baby arrives. He told her he was selling his properties and wrapping up old business dealings. Carrie had already put in her notice at work, planning to start a new life with him in another state. Now she's unemployed, pregnant, and facing financial ruin. Through Carrie's connections at her former company, we learned the full scope of Dad's fraud. He had been running an elaborate Ponzi scheme through his real estate business. He would convince investors to put money into non-existent property developments, use new investments to pay returns to earlier investors, and pocket millions for himself. Many of his victims were retirees who trusted him because of his reputation in the community. One elderly couple invested their entire retirement fund, $800,000, in a fake luxury condo project. They're now living with their children because they lost everything. Another victim was a widow who invested her husband's life insurance payout. The list of victims keeps growing as more people come forward. The stress of everything finally caught up with Mom last week. She collapsed while meeting with her divorce lawyer and had to be rushed to the hospital. The doctors said she had a minor heart attack brought on by extreme stress. Seeing her lying in that hospital bed, hooked up to monitors, made me realize just how much damage Dad's actions had caused. Rachel hasn't been doing much better. After learning about Carrie and the Ponzi scheme, she had a complete breakdown. Her doctor prescribed medication for severe anxiety, but she's struggling to function. Her parents are helping with Emma, Jake, and Lisa, but the kids are having trouble in school and acting out. The one small positive development is that my half-siblings have finally stopped blaming me. When they learned about Carrie and the baby, something shifted in their perspective. Emma called me crying, apologizing for all the horrible things she'd said and posted online. She revealed that Dad had been manipulating them for weeks, telling them I was jealous because he'd always loved them more than me. Jake admitted that Dad had promised to pay for his college tuition, claiming he had a special account set up for each of them. Of course, those accounts were emptied along with everything else. Lisa found out that the horse Dad promised to buy her for her upcoming birthday was just another lie. He'd even shown her fake photos of a horse he claimed he'd purchased. The police are now involved in a multi-state investigation. They've discovered that Dad's fraud scheme spans several states and involves millions of dollars. The FBI has joined the investigation because of the scale of the financial crimes. They've frozen all accounts they could find, but they believe Dad has more hidden assets they haven't traced yet. Mom's heart attack seems to have sparked some humanity in Dad's parents. They finally called her in the hospital and apologized for defending Dad's actions. They admitted that Dad had been lying to them too, claiming that Mom was trying to ruin him out of spite. Now they're seeing the true extent of his deception, and they're devastated that they believed his lies for so long. Everyone keeps asking me if I feel vindicated now that the truth is out, but honestly, I just feel exhausted. Every new revelation brings more pain to more people. The authorities say Dad's crimes might go back decades, meaning there could be even more victims we don't know about yet. Sometimes I wonder if he ever told anyone the truth about anything in his entire life. Update 3: After months of searching, Dad was finally caught at Miami International Airport. He was trying to board a flight to Venezuela using a fake passport under the name Robert Anderson. Security caught him because he matched a federal watch list photo. When they searched his luggage, they found 5 different fake passports and over $100,000 in cash strapped to his body. The FBI investigation revealed that Dad had been planning his escape for months. He had rented a storage unit under a fake name where they found multiple burner phones, more cash, and documents showing he'd been researching countries without extradition treaties with the U.S. They also found a laptop containing emails to a woman in Venezuela, suggesting he had already set up another potential victim there. The district attorney offered Dad a plea deal, 15 years in prison if he revealed the location of all his hidden assets and helped recover money for his victims. Dad refused, maintaining that he was a real victim. He claimed Mom and Rachel had driven him to his actions by being too demanding, and that I had ruined his life by exposing his private matters. His lawyer quit after Dad insisted on using this defense strategy. Mom and Rachel both had to file for bankruptcy. The forensic accountants discovered that Dad had accumulated over $3 million in fraudulent loans using their identities. Both their credit scores are completely destroyed. Mom had to leave her teaching job because the stress was affecting her health. Rachel lost her dental hygienist position because she kept having panic attacks at work. They've started a support group for victims of Dad's fraud. It meets twice a month in the community center. Last meeting, over 40 people showed up. Listening to their stories made me realize how many lives Dad had destroyed. One man lost his family business of 3 generations because Dad convinced him to invest everything in a fake development project. A retired teacher lost her entire pension. Tom and I pooled our savings to help Mom move into a small apartment. She couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments on her teacher's salary alone, and the bank foreclosed on our childhood home. I'm looking for a higher paying job, possibly in corporate law, to help with her medical bills. Tom dropped out of college temporarily to work full-time at a construction company. My half-siblings are adapting to their new reality slowly. Emma took a gap year from college to work at a local coffee shop and help Rachel with expenses. Jake and Lisa had to transfer to public school because Rachel can't afford the private school fees anymore. They're struggling to fit in, but at least they've stopped blaming me for everything. The most unexpected development came from Dad's parents. After years of enabling his behavior, they finally acknowledged the damage he caused. They sold their vacation home to help pay for Mom's medical bills and are trying to maintain relationships with all their grandchildren. They even invited Rachel and her kids to Sunday dinners. Carrie had her baby last week, a little boy. She named him James, not Robert like Dad wanted. She's joined the victim support group and is working with the FBI to help trace Dad's financial transactions. She's also filing for sole custody to make sure Dad can't claim any parental rights from prison. I still struggle with guilt sometimes, not for exposing Dad but for not figuring it out sooner. Every time I meet another victim or hear about someone else who lost their savings, I wonder if I could have prevented it by investigating earlier. The therapist at the victim support group says these feelings are normal but unproductive. The prosecutor says Dad's trial will likely start next month. They have mountains of evidence: falsified documents, forged signatures, fake business records, and testimony from over 50 victims. He's facing multiple federal charges of fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, and money laundering. If convicted on all counts, he could spend the rest of his life in prison. I won't be attending the trial. Neither will Mom, Rachel, or any of my siblings. We've all decided it's better to focus on rebuilding our lives than watching Dad continue to deny responsibility for destroying so many others. The prosecutor says they have more than enough evidence to convict him without our testimony.